having a good time. Doesn't matter if the snow is falling or the wind blows and the rain is pouring. It will always be Christmas in my heart. But this year I hang out with my friends and family, making angels in the January. Doesn't matter, it's Christmas in my heart. And I can't promise Santa's coming to visit. No, he wouldn't miss this in Christmas times. Oh, and the sunset does get better on a skyline painted in blue. Ooh, and that's what we do. We'll be chilling and having a good time. The snow is falling, all the windows in the rain. It will always be Christmas in my heart. But this year I wanna hang out with my friends and family, making angels in the January. Doesn't matter, it's Christmas in my heart. Here we go. All right. Dance, dance, now this Christmas, we're gonna dance. We're gonna dance, 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 come on. Dance. Gonna dance, dance, have a good time. Dance, dance, all night long. We're gonna dance, dance, and have a good time. I think Santa's gonna come and join us in this song. Hello, everyone. Hello, and happy Wednesday evening. Oh my goodness. Here we are, you all. Our last chapter. Oh my goodness. What do you think is going to happen in our very last chapter of the book? Oh, don't know. But we will soon find out. That's right. Chapter 18, our very last chapter. I wanted to play a little bit of Christmas music to start the night out happy. And now we are going to get into chapter 18. And if you saw the video, you will know that KO was depressed. And her and Win broke up. KO was depressed. Even the fact that she had been hired by the Apple Blossom Books as their new publicist hadn't been enough to raise her spirits. She was scheduled to start work the day after New Year's and should have been thrilled. She was only nothing felt right without Win. It was Christmas Eve, and it should have been one of the happiest days of the year, but she felt like staying in bed. Her sister and family were expecting her later that afternoon, so KO knew she couldn't mope around the condo all day. She had things to do, food to buy, gifts to wrap, and she'd better get moving. Putting on her coat and gloves, she walked out of her condo wearing a smile. She refused to let anyone know she was suffering from a broken heart. "Catherine," Levon called the instant she saw her. She stood at the lobby mailbox as if she had been there for hours. "Just waiting for KO? Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," KO returned, a little too brightly. She managed to smile and with her shoulders squared, made her way to the door. "Do you have any plans for Christmas?" her neighbor called after her. KO's mouth hurt from holding that smile for so long. She nodded. "I'm Zelda, Zach, and the girls this evening, and then I thought I'd spend a quiet Christmas by myself." Needless to say, she hadn't issued any invitations, and she had hardly seen Levon in days. Tomorrow she'd cook for herself, While doing errands this morning, she planned to purchase a very small turkey. She refused to mope and feel lonely, not on Christmas Day. Don't want to skip any pages tonight, that's for sure. Have dinner with me, Levon said. It'll just be me and the boys. When K.O. hesitated, she added, Tom, Philip, and Martin would love to see you. I'm cooking a turkey and all the fixins, and I'd be grateful for the company. Are you sure? Of course I'm sure. K.O. didn't take long to consider her friend's invitation. I'd love to then. What would you like me to bring? Dessert, Levon said promptly. Something yummy and special for Christmas. All right. They agreed on a time, and K.O. left, feeling better than she had in days. Just as she was about to step outside, she turned back. How's Max? She asked, knowing her neighbor was on good terms with Wynn's father. Exactly how good those terms were remained to be seen. She wondered fleetingly what the Jeffreys were doing for Christmas, then decided it was none of her business. Still, the afternoon, K.O. had found Max in Levon's condo. She had been shocked, to say the least. Their brief conversation the following day hadn't been too enlightening, but maybe over Christmas dinner, Levon would tell her what happened and what was happening now. Flustered, Levon lowered her eyes as she sorted through a stack of mail that seemed to be mostly Christmas cards. He's completely recovered and, she whispered, he apologized to Tom. A sense of pleasure through K.O. at this, and at the way Levon blushed. Apparently, this was one romance that held promise. Her own had fizzled fast enough. She'd come to truly like Wynn, more than like. At the thought of him, an aching sensation pressed down on her. In retrospect, she wished she had handled the situation differently, because she couldn't resist. She had to ask, have you seen Wynn? Her friend nodded, but the look in Levon's eyes told K.O. everything she dreaded. He's still angry, isn't he? Levon gave her a sad smile. I'm sure everything will work out. I know what I saw in that raisin bran. She attempted a laugh. When you see him again, tell him. She paused. Tell him, she started again, and then gave up. Wynn had made his feelings clear. He told her it would be best if they didn't see each other again. And he'd meant it. 9 days with no word told her he wasn't changing his mind. Well, she had her pride, too. What would you like me to tell him? Levon asked. Nothing. It's not important. You should write a letter, Levon suggested. Perhaps I will, K.O. said on her way out the door. She knew she wouldn't. It was over. Blossom Street seemed more alive than at any other time she could remember. A group of carolers at the corner, songbooks in their hands. An elderly gentleman rang a bell for charity outside the French cafe, which was crowded with customers. Seeing how busy the place was, K.O. decided to purchase her Christmas dessert now, before they completely sold out. After adding a donation to the she entered the cafe. She stood in a long line. When her turn finally came to order, she saw that one of the bakers was helping at the counter. K.O. knew Alex Townsend, or at least she knew her often enough to know her by name. Merry Christmas, K.O., Alex said. Merry Christmas to you too, K.O. surveyed the sweet delicacies behind the glass counter. I need something that says Christmas, she murmured. The decorated cookies were festive, but didn't seem quite right. A pumpkin pie would work, but it wasn't special. How about a small bûche de Noël? Bûche de Noël, Alex said. It's a traditional French dessert, a fancy cake decorated with mocha cream frosting and shaped to look like a Yule log. I baked it myself from a special recipe of the owner's. De Noël, Ko repeated. It sounded perfect. They're going fast, Alex pointed out. Sold, Ko said. The young woman went to collect one from the refrigerated case. It was then that Ko noticed Alex's engagement. Will there be anything else? Alex asked, setting the pink counter and tying it with a string. That diamond's new, isn't it? Grinning, Alex examined her ring finger. I got it last week. Jordan couldn't wait to give it to me. Congratulations, Ko told her. When's the wedding? Alex looked down at the diamond as if she hardly could take her eyes off it. June. That's fabulous. I'm already talking to Susanna Nelson. Oh, how nice. That's got to sting a little bit, though, to, break up with your boyfriend and then somebody's getting married. The flower shop across the street. Jacqueline, my friend, insists we hold the reception at the country club. If it was up to me, Jordan and I would just elope, but his family would never stand for that. She shrugged in a resigned way. I love Jordan, and I don't care what I have to do as long as I get to be his wife. The words echoed in Ko's heart as she walked out of the French cafe with a final Merry Christmas. She didn't know Alex Townsend all that well, but she liked her. Alex was entirely without pretense. No one need doubt how she felt about any particular subject. She spoke her mind in a straightforward manner that left nothing to speculate. Ko passed Susanna's garden, the flower shop, on her way to the bank. Her husband stood out front, wishing everyone a Merry Christmas. As Ko walked past, Susanna handed her a sprig of holly with bright red berries. Thank you, this is so nice, Ko said, tucking the holly into her coat pocket. She loved the flower shop and the beauty it brought to the street. I want to let the neighborhood know how much I appreciate the support. I've only been in business since September, and everyone's been so helpful. Here, have a cup of hot cider. Susanna's husband was handing out plastic cups from a small table set up beside him. I'm Joe, he said. Hello, Joe. I'm Catherine O'Connor. Susanna slid one arm around her husband's waist and gazed up at him with such adoration it was painful for Ko to watch. Everywhere she turned, people were happy and in love. A knot formed in her throat. Putting on a happy, carefree face was getting harder by the minute. Just then the door to a good yarn opened, and out came Lydia Gautz and a man Ko must be her husband. They were accompanied by a young boy, obviously their son. Lydia paused when she saw Ko. Lydia was well known on the street. Were you planning to stop in here, she asked, and cast a quick glance at her husband. Brad convinced me to close early today. I already sent my sister home, but if you need yarn, I'd be happy to get it for you. In fact, you could even pay me later. She looked at her husband again, as if to make sure he didn't object to the delay. It wouldn't take more than a few minutes. Oh. You know what it's like to run out of yarn when you need one ball to finish a project. No, that's fine, Ko said. She'd always wanted to knit, and now that Levon was taking a class, maybe she'd join too. Merry Christmas, Lydia tucked her arm in her husband's. Merry Christmas, Ko. Soon they hurried down the street, with the boy trotting ahead. Transfixed, Ko stood there unmoving. The lump that had formed in her throat grew huge. The whole world was in love, and she'd let the opportunity of her life slip away. She'd let Win go with barely a token protest, and that was wrong. If she believed in their love, she needed to fight for it, instead of pretending everything was fine without him, because it wasn't. In fact, she was downright miserable, and it was time she admitted it. She knew what she had to do, afraid that if she didn't act quickly, she'd lose her nerve. Ko ran back across the street and into her own building. Marching to the elevator, she punched the button and waited. She wasn't even sure what she'd tell Win. She figured that out when she saw him. But seeing him was the necessity. She couldn't spend another minute like this. She'd made a terrible mistake, and so had he. If there was any chance of salvaging this relationship, she had to try. Her heart seemed to be pounding as twice as its normal rate as she rode the elevator up to Win's penthouse condominium. She went inside once, and then it was brief. By the time she reached his front door, she was so dizzy she'd become lightheaded. That didn't deter her from ringing the buzzer and waiting for what felt like an eternity. Only it wasn't. When who opened the door, it was Max. "Catherine," he said, obviously surprised to find her at his son's door. "Is Win available?" she asked, as winded as if she'd climbed the stairs instead of taking the elevator. Talking to Win now had assumed a sense of urgency. Win stepped into the foyer and frowned when he saw her. "Catherine." She could see in his eyes. "Merry Christmas," Max said. He didn't seem inclined to leave. Oh no, what is going to happen? Oh my goodness. Will Ko win him back? "Could we talk?" she asked privately. She was terrified he'd tell her that everything had already been said, so she rushed to add, "Really, this will only take a moment, and then I'll leave." Win, his father, reluctantly left the entryway. Kate remained standing there, clutching her purse with one hand and the pink box with the other. "I was out at the French cafe and I talked to Alex." "Alex?" "She's one of the bakers and a friend of Lydia, and Lydia's the lady who owns the Good Yarn." "But that's not important. What is important is that Alex received an engagement ring for Christmas. So she's so happy and in love, and Lydia is too, and Susanna from the flower shop, and just about everyone else on the street. It's so full of there, and all at once it came to me that I couldn't let this Christmas pass with doing things between us the way they are." She stopped to take a deep breath. "Catherine, please let me finish. Otherwise, I don't know if I'll have the courage to continue." He motioned for her to speak. "I'm so sorry, Win, for everything. For wanting to be right and then subjecting you and Zoe and Laura. Their behavior did change after Zelda read your book. And while I can't say I agree with everything you..." "This is an apology?" he asked, raising his eyebrows. "I'm trying. I'm sincere. Please hear me out." He crossed his arms and looked away. In fact, he seemed to find something behind her utterly fascinating. This wasn't the time to lose her courage. She went on, speaking quickly, so quickly that the words practically ran together. "I wanted to tell you, it was rude of me to assume I knew more than you on the subject of children. It was presumptuous and self-righteous. I was trying to prove how wrong you are. I was right. To be honest, I don't know what's wrong. All I know is how much I miss you. It hurts that you're out of my life. I'm the one who's been presumptuous and self-righteous, Wynne said. You are right, Catherine, about almost everything. It hasn't been easy for me to accept that, let alone face it. Oh, for heaven's sakes, aren't you two going to kiss? Oh no, who was standing behind her? Levon, I bet. Yep, I'll bet you it was Levon. And makeup, Max demanded, coming back into the foyer. Apparently, standing in the living room, out of sight, and had listened in on every word. Wynne, if you let this woman walk away, then you're a fool, an even bigger fool than you know. Wynne stuttered. You've been in love with her for weeks. Max shook his head, as if more than obvious. Wynne pinned his father with a fierce glare. You love me, K.O. asked, voice rising to a squeak. Because I'm in love with you, too. A light flickered in his eye at her confession. Catherine, I appreciate your coming. However, this is serious, and it's something we both need to think over. It's too important, and we can't allow ourselves to get caught up in emotions that are part of the holidays. We'll talk after Christmas, all right? I can't do that, she cried. Good for you, Max shouted, encouraging her. I'm going to phone Levon. This calls for champagne. What does, Wynne asked. Us, she explained, you and me. I love you, Wynne, and I can't bear the thought that I won't see you again. It's tearing me up. I don't need time to think about us. I already know how I feel. And if what your father says is true, and you know how you feel about me, well, I do need to think, he insisted. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do yet, because I can't continue promoting a book whose theories I can no longer wholly support. Let me deal with that first. No, she said. Love should come first. She stared into his eyes. Love changes everything, Wynne. Then, because it was impossible to hold back for another second, she put down her purse and the Yule log and threw her arms around him. Wynne was stiff and then his arms circled her too. Are you always this stubborn? He asked. Yes, sometimes. Even more than this. Ask Zelda. Kissed her. His arms tightened around her as if he had found it hard to believe she was actually in his embrace. That's the way to handle it, Max said from somewhere behind them. Wynne and K.O. ignored him. Oh my goodness. He's been a real pain these last few days, Max went on, but this should improve matters. Wynne broke off the kiss and held her gaze. We'll probably never agree on anything, probably. I can be just as stubborn as you. That's questionable, she said with a laugh. His lips found hers again, as if he wanted her not to kiss her. Each kiss required a bit more time and became a bit more. I don't believe in long courtships, he murmured, his eyes still closed. I don't either, she said. And I'm going to want children. He hesitated. We don't need all the answers right this minute, do we, Dr. Jeffries? About Santa. She interrupted him, cutting off any argument by kissing him. What resistance there was did not last. I was about to suggest we could bring Santa out from beneath that sleigh, he whispered. His eyes briefly fluttered open. Really? This was one more than she'd been more than willing to forgive as long as she had Wynne. but Santa and Wind was better. No hamsters, though, he said firmly. Freddie, she added. Wind chuckled. Or anything else. The door chimed, and Max hurried to answer it, ushering Levon inside. The instant she saw Win and K.O. in each other's arms, she clapped with delight. Didn't I tell you everything would work out? Max. You did indeed. Levon nodded sagely. I think I may have psychic powers after all. I saw it all plain as day in the leaves of my poinsettia, she proclaimed. Before Max called, two of them fell to the ground together. Despite herself, K.O. laughed. Until a few minutes ago, her love life had virtually disappeared. Now there was hope, real hope for her and Win to learn from each other. And as Levon's prophecy, real or imagined, implied, grow together instead of apart. Champagne, anyone? Max asked, bringing out a bottle. Win still held K.O., and she wasn't objecting. I need to hire you, he whispered close to her ear. Hire me? I'm kinda late with my Christmas letter this year. I wondered if I can convince you to write one for me. Of course, it's on the house. With his arms raised, she leaned back and looked at him. Is there anything in... Oh, yes. You can write about the success of my first published book and explain that there will be a retraction in the next edition, or, if you prefer, you could call it a compromise. K.O. smiled. And then I want you to tell my family and friends that I'm working on a new book that'll be called The Happy Child, and it'll be about creating appropriate boundaries within the free child system of parenting. K.O. rewarded him with a lengthy kiss, left her knees weak. Fortunately, he had a firm hold on her, and she on him. You can also mention the fact there's going to be a wedding in the family. 2 weddings, Max inserted as he handed Levon a champagne glass. 2, Levon echoed shyly. Max nodded, filling 3 more glasses. Win and K.O.'s isn't the only romance that started rocky. The way I figure it, if I can win Tom over, his mistress shouldn't be far behind. Oh, Max, is there anything else you'd like me to say in your Christmas letter? K.O. asked Win. Oh, yes, there's plenty more. But I think we'll leave it for the next Christmas letter, and then the one after that. He brought K.O. close more, hugged her tight. She loved being in his arms and in his life. Next year's Christmas letter would be both of them. It would be all about how happy they were, and every word would be true. The end. Oh my goodness. What an awesome book. I sure hope you all... Yes, I am so happy they are back together. I kind of figured, she's correct. She really was correct in his book. It was damaging families. It wasn't helping families. So it's good to hear him contemplating a second book by putting a retraction book out there to help go along with the first one and creating those boundaries that children need. It just giving them free reign. Oh my goodness. It just, like, what is wrong with you kind of thing. So it's good to see that he agreed with her and that he's going to take care of it. So how many of you enjoyed The Christmas Letters by Debbie Macomber. That was really awesome. It is sure an awesome book. That's right, Paula. It is an awesome book. And I'd like to ask you all a question before I close out for the night. If you would like another book, let me know if you want it to be a mystery, a love story, or a Valentine's story. Just let me know what kind of book you'd like me to read, and we can continue on. But I do have something fun coming your way about Debbie Macomber that's going to be in a video shortly. So thank you all for coming in. I really enjoyed sharing this book, The Christmas Letters, with you every Wednesday at 9 o'clock. It has been a lot of fun. So I'm going to play another Christmas tune, and then I will say goodnight.